Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Downward Thrust here. Today we're going to talk about why World of Warcraft Vanilla was so awesome. Now, before we get started, just to let you guys know, this is not going to be a comparison video between Vanilla and the modern expansions of World of Warcraft. We're just simply here to talk about why we love Vanilla World of Warcraft. Now, I'm here with my good friend and probably the best mage I've ever seen, Matt. He's going to join me and go over some talking points to discuss why this game was so awesome. So we're going to break down this video in several categories. It's going to be quite conversational, so this is probably one of those videos where you can just put down the phone and listen to it. Alright, so before we get into why Vanilla was so awesome, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about our initial experiences with Vanilla World of Warcraft, how we got into it, and of course why we're excited about the classic WoW. So I guess I will start here and tell you my story about how I got into World of Warcraft when I was about 15 years old. I actually went down to the local GameStop to pick up my copy, and unfortunately there was actually no copies in stock. So I hurried down to the next store, not in stock either. Went to the next store, completely sold out as well. I ended up going to like 6 or 7 stores before I actually got my hands on a copy. And it was pretty funny because I went up to the register and there's this guy there, and I asked him, hey man, you got any more copies of World of Warcraft? And he said, yeah, I've got one more copy. And he handed me the copy of the game, gave him the money, and he said Horde or Alliance. And I had never played an MMO at the time, and I had no idea what was the game was all about. So I said, what are you talking about? And he's like, Horde or Alliance, dude. I'm like, what's Horde and what's Alliance? He's like, well, there's 2 factions in the game, and Alliance is for pussies. So are you Horde or Alliance? And I said, well, I'm not a pussy, so I guess I'm going Horde. So that's how I decided I was going to go Horde, and I ran home and put in the game. It was a fascinating experience, and 15 years later, we're still talking about Vanilla World of Warcraft. So, Matt, why don't you tell people about your first experiences with WoW, how you got into it, and basically your first days with the game.
Sure. So, WoW was your first MMO?
WoW was my first MMO, actually. Dabbled in EverQuest a little bit, but I kind of thought MMOs were for nerds, so I tried to steer away from them.
Okay. Maybe you don't remember this, but I played EverQuest first, actually, with like the rest of our friends too. And you're actually the person that got us to play WoW, and you used to call EverQuest the Kmart version of WoW. You remember that? Yeah, you don't remember that?
I did not remember that. I thought you guys bought WoW before I did.
No, I'm pretty sure you're the one that talked everybody into it.
Okay. Well, not ironically, actually, my first character was an orc warrior named Stormrider, which was the same character name as my barbarian from Diablo 2 that I made, I think, to level 93 on that US ladder. And as you guys know, anyone watching this video who has played Vanilla WoW knows that leveling a warrior is an absolutely horrendous nightmare experience, and that was my first experience playing Vanilla WoW. It actually took me about 4 months to get to level 15, because for some reason, stupid enough, I was going down the protection tree with a 2-handed katana. And I actually quit playing warrior when I was about level 33. I made it to Desolace, and I ran out. I found that fishing village on the west coast, all the way at the end, and picked up my first quest to go kill some centaurs or whatever, and I couldn't kill a single mob, and it was quite depressing, and I quit. Soon rolled a hunter named Ukabuma. Quick story before we get into this video, guys. I was actually pretty popular on the Battle.net forums, not for anything good, by the way. I was actually in, I think it was Black Rock Depths, and I was a level 54 hunter doing the primary dungeon there. I think it was like a group of 5 or something like that. And for whatever reason, a dwarven hand cannon dropped off a normal elite mob. And because this was my first MMO experience, I wasn't very attuned to the fact that, well, a binding on equip weapon should be greeted by every single person in the group, despite if anyone in particular needs it. So I saw this shiny purple item. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. Everyone greeted it, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh shit, I need this gun. So I needed it. But I think deep down I knew what I was doing. And the very next day I put the Dwarven hand cannon up on the auction house and I made like a 900 gold profit. Lo and behold, somebody found that story and put it on the Battle.net forums, and I was actually kind of an outcast in my server. There was this huge thread about my hunter named Ukabuma. I know it's kind of a stupid name, but people were trying to boycott me getting future groups to group and dungeon with people. Isn't that funny?
Dude, reputation. Reputation was everything.
Reputation was big because, and this is kind of one of the things we're going to talk about in this video, the community. The community for vanilla WoW was, would you say it was more tight-knit back then?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Especially with the servers, like there was, you played with people on your server, that was it.
And we played on a PvP server, but there was also PvE servers and role-playing servers. I actually always thought that role-playing servers were quite interesting because apparently someone got married, I don't know if you know this, but someone got married playing World of Warcraft in the game. But it was actually for real in real life. Did you know that?
Doesn't surprise me.
So yeah, role-playing servers were just grounds for basically role-playing any kind of experience you really wanted to. And some people didn't even play the game. They just kind of hung out with people. Like I saw these two night elves. They were like holding hands, kind of metaphorically speaking, or something like that, on one of the docks near Ashenvale. It was, I don't know, people just kind of just do whatever they want. But anyway, we played on a PvP server, and the sense of community back in vanilla WoW, once again, we're not trying to compare vanilla to modern WoW because they're different experiences for different people, right? But back then, the vanilla experience in the community was all about reputation, and the thing that really stands out for me is that classic WoW, well, I guess I should say vanilla WoW. Classic WoW is going to be coming out hopefully next year. But vanilla WoW is the sense that people wanted to help each other, people wanted to group up, there was more talking, and there was just a brighter sense of community.
Do you think it's that people wanted to help each other, or do you think it's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch your kind of thing?
Oh, I mean, there was definitely, I would say, competitive communication as well as helpful communication. I mean, we've all been questing in Stranglethorn Vale, and we've been, we're trying to track that monster we need for that quest, and someone comes up and tags it. And that mob goes from red to gray, meaning you don't get any experience for it, and that's what they do. But I feel like, especially the lower level zones, right? Like well, first of all, when I think about like the world of World of Warcraft and the progression from 1 to 60, I think about the change of pace that happens when you go from 1 to 60, right? Level 1, you're kind of feeling it out. You get to level 10, you kind of get to the Barrens, you get that Chuck Norris chat and the general chat. People are starting to group up a little bit, but then you hit 20s and you're starting to do dungeons, and level 30, you encounter more open world PvP and Stranglethorn. But then like level 40 to 60, there's this kind of slower pace as things kind of slow down, things become more isolated. You don't see as many people because, the majority of new players are kind of geared towards those early levels. So there's this different pace from starting the game versus where you end up at level 60. But case in point, when you get to level 60, it's one of the more rewarding experiences. Do you remember when you hit level 60 and how good that felt?
Heck yeah. Don't you? I didn't remember being so freaking excited to just get started on like the level 65 mans, 10 mans, back when like solo was a 10 man. Getting your tier sets, starting working on your tier 0.
See, fun fact, actually, I had a warlock at the time during the tier set craze, I guess you could say. When tier 0.5 they released a tier 0.5 quest line. That was one of the harder quest lines to get, and I actually got my full tier 0.5 set, although you completed much more in-game content than I did. How far did you get in vanilla WoW?
I actually did not, because we were only like a 25-man guild, so we hardly did any of the 40-mans.
But you went to Molten Core, though, through maybe a pub?
Yeah. We did Molten Core a few times. Actually, before I got in the guild that I was in for like the 8 years or whatever, I was in a Blackwing raiding guild because they needed mages.
Well, they always need mages. Mages got that hard CC, right? Especially good ones like Kyrian.
They had something in that place needed like AoE, like the arcane explosions for like whelps or something. I don't know if you remember that room where like all the smoke is You have to AoE all the whelps.
I never got into Blackwing Lair actually. I was that kind of player. You know, there's different types of players in WoW. I was that type of player that hit level 60, but then didn't want to put in the work to join a raiding guild to see that high level content. So I would just roll an alt and then level to 60 and then roll an alt. So I think that while the leveling experience is fantastic, what people miss about vanilla WoW sometimes is that wild sense of endgame raiding with that giant 40-man party. It's incredibly chaotic. I miss it because during the infancy period of vanilla WoW, there was this sense of anything can happen. And I like the bigger raid sizes. Of course I hate them because it's hard to get groups, right? That's kind of the downside. But
unless you're in a guild, right? Yeah, it reinforces the need for a guild, I guess. Like you start seeing these people as your comrades, right? You want to go to a raid, you got to be friends with these 39 other people.
Heck yeah. But I don't know about your experiences in the late game content, but having 40 people allows a decent percent of people to basically blend into the crowd. And it was, yeah, it was good for me because I didn't have a lot of gear, but I played a warlock, which was a fairly in-demand class for at least for DPS. I would say about 6 to 8 people in that 40-man raid had absolutely no fucking idea what they were doing, and it was totally fine because they were compensated by 32 other people. But you fast forward today, and things are much different. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. What I want to start doing right now is breaking down some of the concrete reasons why we think vanilla WoW was so amazing. And we're going to try to structure this video in such a way that it's flowy. And when we get to a new section, I will change the footage on the screen to a new zone, so you know that we've gone to a new talking point. The first one we want to talk about is the world. The world of World of Warcraft. And the thing that stands out for me the most when we look back on vanilla WoW is that it was giant, and it made you feel like a small fish in a big pond. So Matt, why don't you talk a little bit about starting the game up 15 years ago as a level 1 mage in your case, stepping out into was it Tristfall Glades as an undead mage?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how it made you feel to step out into this giant world where it was basically your job to from level 1 to level 60 any way you could, and it was basically one giant adventure.
Sure. So one thing I thought was really cool, I'm sure they still do this, but I'm talking about back then. So first logging in, you hit the M key, you can look at the map, but it's got all the areas there. You just can't see anything in the zone until you get there. Mm-hmm. Love that. But you get the sense of like the grandeur, like how big the world is, and you're looking at the area you're in, you're like, this area seems huge, and it's such a small part of even like the start, like that first little starting area where you get like level 1 to 6. It's pretty huge. Big. Yeah, when you first walk into the game, that area is huge. And then when you leave that little canyon, it like really opens up. So for like the undead starting zone, you're in that little, I don't know, hole.
Graveyard shitter place.
Yeah. And you walk out and you got the pumpkin patch, you got the Barov family farm up there.
God forbid you're at that pumpkin patch as a warrior and you pull more than one mob. God forbid that happens, by the way.
Good luck hitting anything.
Seriously.
I love that. I don't know. That's a good feeling for me. You gotta like scrape around for funds too to buy your very first skills. Everything about the early game I love.
Since we're going to be talking primarily about PvP servers, talk to me a little bit about being a Horde player and seeing an Alliance scum. Sorry, Alliance people out there. This is just the way it went down. Don't get offended.
I am sorry.
You guys are scumbags. But tell me about existing in a world, by the way, while leveling, existing in a cross-faction MMO where anything can happen. So talk to me a little bit about that open world vibe. Factions versus factions, loyalty versus, just existing in a MMO like, let's say, Rift, for example, which came after World of Warcraft, where there were no factions. There seemed, at least for me, there was less purpose to the world because you weren't really fighting for anything. But in World of Warcraft, there was this dynamicism between two different factions. And I don't know about you, but I felt pretty loyal to the Horde just by being with these other people.
Absolutely. There's like different mindsets, right? When I was leveling, I tried to stay very efficient. So anytime I would see like an alliance guy, you know, he'd put out the feelers because the tension's there, right? You can feel it. You don't know if he's going to attack you. He doesn't know if you're going to attack him. You kind of feel it out, right? Me, personally, most of the time I was just trying to quest, get my ass to the next zone, get these quests done, get them out the way. Pretty much if they left me alone, I'd leave them alone. But the second, like, if they want to start a fight or whatever, I'm going to drill him into the ground. And the second he respawns, I'm going to drill him into the ground again. Don't care about my quest anymore at that point, right?
See, that's interesting because I was actually a player that I got into the red zone whenever I saw an alliance person. I don't know what it was. It's like a dog that sees a cat across the street and just runs for it. Like, when I was out, like I said, I primarily played a warrior, but then I quit, started a hunter. Hunters were actually incredibly good if you were good with macros and doing the feign death macro with the frost trap. Really, really good at PvP. Kind of underappreciated, actually. Whenever I saw an alliance, especially a fucking gnome, by the way, hated those motherfuckers. No offense to gnome players out there in the world. I just went ballistic. I didn't care if I was on my last quest mob for my quest. I didn't care if I was knee deep in a huge chain. If I saw an alliance person, I was going after them like white on rice, dude. I was all over that shit. There was this feeling of rivalries in this game that I really loved. And for people who did not play on a PvP server, you missed out, at least in my opinion, on this dynamic gameplay, because there was this huge difference between, like you said, questing versus, oh shit, something's about to go down. Now my entire gameplay loop might change for the next 30 minutes, let alone when people would bust out their level 60 smurfs and come in and there would be huge fights and, you know, Stranglethorn and South Shore and shit like that. But just generally speaking, cross-faction MMOs, you would agree, were awesome back then, right?
Completely awesome. I want to touch on something too, and we kind of touched on it earlier. Reputation, right? That existed with the other faction too. The same people you saw as you were leveling, you saw them at level 20, you see them at level 30, you see them at level 40. They're leveling with you. Same red idiots, okay? You're seeing them the entire way. Say you're level 20, some idiot ganks you, some stupid rogue, gnome rogue, ganks you. You're like, okay, what's a stupid rogue name? Sneaky Shorty. Okay, Sneaky Shorty. Right? Level 30. I see him again. I'm jumping his ass. I'm not waiting. Gloves are on the ground. He's eating a fireball. That's it. All the way to 60. And even, like, forever, basically. He's on the shit list. He's getting shit on.
And the cool thing about, I think you'll definitely agree with this, they did not add honor to the game. I'm pretty sure they didn't add honor for a long time. So killing people, killing the members of the opposite faction in World of Warcraft Vanilla gained you absolutely nothing except for pride, right? It was a war for pride. Because,
hell yeah.
Yeah, right? Eventually they added honor per kill, right? You would get a certain amount of honor, which would go to your global honor rating. Although it was very trivial, it was something at least to incentivize you to go out and participate in open world, PvP out in the open world or whatever. Before that, it was basically just to have fun and to experience something new. So that's what I really, really liked about PvP servers, at least in general. But let's go ahead and turn our attention to our second talking point, which is probably what gets brought up the most in Vanilla Warcraft, World of Warcraft, which is the amazing level experience from 1 to 60 and how difficult it was. So I shared with you my story about my warrior, which was a small slice of, you know, going from 1 to 60. It was going from 1 to level 33. It was incredibly challenging. But talk to me a little bit about why the leveling experience being difficult yet rewarding and the various challenges that people encountered on that journey, why it made the game what it was.
So I know you're saying you thought leveling as a warrior was challenging. I kind of want to touch on that a little more, because with me, I know I died a lot, and like you, I grew up playing games. I played games like my whole life. I hop into World of Warcraft and I'm seeing gray screen a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm not used to that, so it was kind of like a challenge, right? It's still a game. So if I'm dying, it's because I suck. I need to get better. I got to work on it. So that I love that, right? That's the throwing skill into the mix. Skill mattered, which is huge, and they did such a good job from like when you first start out to like even at like level 10. There were some quests that would kick your butt if you weren't careful, right?
You had to take group quests very seriously unless you're a warlock or a hunter. Questing in general was incredibly difficult. Let's just let's just go through the leveling tiers real quick and talk a little bit about each one of them. So level 1 to 10, what I loved about level 1 to 10 was the sense of exploration and the sense that like you said, you could die at any time. But then you kind of got accustomed to your class a little bit by then. Before then you were kind of feeling things out, testing out your skills and whatnot. Then kind of 10 to 20 hits, and we're going to be talking about this primarily, guys, in terms of the horde perspective, because we're horde players. What I always loved about that level range was going to the Barrens. The Barrens is a pretty iconic place, full of Chuck Norris jokes. But I would say the leveling zones, especially early on in that leveling bracket, especially the Barrens, like that was such a well put together zone. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And what's cool too is like, I don't know if the Barrens was the only place to go at that point, but pretty much no matter what faction you were eventually headed there at some point, right?
You could also go to Silverpine Forest for a bit, I'm pretty sure.
But even that was only good till like 14, right? No matter what race you picked out the gates, you're going to end up in the Barrens sometime.
Correct. And the good thing about the leveling experience in Vanilla WoW was that I would go so far to say challenging yet fair. Usually if you died, it was a combination of you either got ganked, which that's a whole different story, or it's something like maybe you pulled one too many mobs, or you pulled the wrong mob, or you didn't line aside a mob, you didn't interrupt a spellcaster from healing, something like that. But I would say overall the leveling experience in Vanilla WoW was rewarding because it was so difficult. And in an age where games are getting, I would say, progressively easier over time, it was nice to turn on my computer back then and know I had a long, hard journey ahead of myself.
It was hard, right? But it was also rewarding. Or, no, that's not the word. Fair. You already said fair. But kind of like in Dark Souls. In that game, when you die, it has nothing to do with the game, right? It's all on you. You did something dumb, and you got punished for it. Pretty much the same thing. There's some exceptions, right? Like, I know you remember that, the mine area in Hillsbrad Foothills. That area was BS.
Yeah, because there was vertical aggro, depending on what tunnel you were in. So if you aggroed a mob that was on a different level of the tunnel, just because it was in the same horizontal space, it would still aggro.
Yep. And that mine was packed.
But the beauty about Hillsbrad, which I guess that's a good segue, because that would be the next leveling bracket, level 30-ish to level 40-ish. Hillsbrad Foothill was basically a monster zone that was full of a whole bunch of crazy shit, right? We had the South Shore PvP, which... Did you ever participate in those huge graveyard battles?
They even had, I don't know if you ever did the event, like, I think the guy's name was Hecular's Rod.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever do that quest? You remember that quest?
A little bit, yeah. The grave, where you had to go into South Shore to plant something at the grave, right?
Yeah. But it spawned like a super strong elite.
Yeah, pretty much everything in World of Warcraft Vanilla was much harder than it is today. I know we're not trying to compare Vanilla to classic World of Warcraft or some of the expansions, but generally speaking, a lot of people love Vanilla because it was a hard leveling experience, but it was incredibly rewarding. There were also a lot of quality of life features missing or limited in Vanilla, which is much different than it is in today's expansion packs. Number one probably would be the focus on summoning stones. I don't know about you, but I actually remember summoning stones to be a pretty fond memory, because you actually had to work with people. Like if you're trying to get a dungeon together, you actually had to work with people to get to summoning stones, because you couldn't just teleport directly from a menu, right? As you can do today. You had to look and form groups manually, which meant that you had to actually communicate with people in chat. You had to spam general chat, find the right party members, which once again kind of added the sense of community to the grind. There was also no quest hubs or centralized questing. There were, you know, towns and such and groups of NPCs that would give you groups of quests that would be in the relative same area, but there were definitely no quest hubs, and you couldn't get your mount until level 40. So what did you feel about the progression from 1 to 40 in terms of no mount versus when you get your mount?
That's basically night and day, right? Because a mount, especially in vanilla, meant like not only faster travel. How much did you run around in that game like an idiot? Okay,
All day.
all day. No quest helper, none of that, right? You're just running around like an idiot looking for what you're supposed to be doing. So mounts were huge, and they let you run through zones, past mobs. You could outrun stuff. Finally, it's huge.
But you had to have enough gold. And I know a lot of people level 40 were poor as shit. Because the game was so difficult, there was no guaranteed mount at level 40, because during the course of your leveling up to level 40, sometimes you had, like, if you were playing a very gear dependent class, like let's say you're playing a rogue or a warrior that is very weapon oriented, you had to spend money on incremental upgrades if you weren't lucky enough when you're doing your dungeons. So that would kind of sink into your gold pool, and you might be looking at like level 45 before you could even think about getting a mount. So there was some like balancing that you had to do. Some of the classes got free mounts, like the Warlock or the Paladin. I eventually played a Warlock, and let me tell you something, getting a free mount to level fucking 40 is a gold mine.
Don't forget too how expensive your skills were. How many times are you like you hit like a level and all of a sudden you get like 6 new spells and you're like, man, I can only buy 3 of these. Which 3 am I buying?
You could make some really proactive decisions when acquiring skills, couldn't you? I remember playing the Warlock, and then playing later on I played I believe it was a Shaman, and you could like omit like half the skills from like an enhanced two-handed Wind Fury build, and you'd be totally fine, but you'd save yourself like hundreds upon hundreds of gold, which eventually you could dump into your mount. And that's kind of one of the things I liked about World of Warcraft was you played with limited resources, right? Nothing was given to you. No one held your hand.
Unless you see that Dwarven hand cannon drop, right?
That's true. That's very true. There was no freebies unless the Dwarven hand cannon dropped. What I'm trying to say is it was difficult because there were so many restrictions put in place. And what did you have to do to actually get through that journey? You had to work together, right? With people. You had to communicate. You had to go on quests together. And there was this sense of community that developed from it. Let's talk a little bit about the auction house, because I felt like the auction house was implemented well, because a natural economy resulted, unlike something like Diablo 3 when they released that piece of crap. No offense to D3 players out there. They put a real money economy in it, and it completely boned the principle of acquiring gear.
I think it's all tied to how, I don't know if the servers are small, but just the amount of people you interacted with, the pool was small, so it wasn't hard to manipulate like the market or the economy. Especially if you had, like with enchanting or any of those desired skills, right? The enchants were huge.
Mm-hmm.
You basically had the leverage, and you could get yourself like a reputation, because a lot of the enchants were pretty rare. So you start getting a reputation like, oh, hey, this guy has this enchant. All of a sudden, you get people whispering you, hey, man, can I buy that? Just like stuff like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, and if you had a Dwarven hand cannon drop, you can actually. It doesn't even matter if you undercut the price point, because it's free gold.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could just say, hey, you know, this is worth 700, but guess what? Sale's on.
Sale's on for 650, baby. Let's go.
Daddy wants the epic mount.
He sure does. I actually used the auction house quite a bit when I was playing my initial warrior, because gear-dependent classes often struggled, I think, a little bit more than some of the other classes. Talking generally speaking about the differences in progressive leveling, you basically had the warrior and the paladin at the bottom, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my opinion, but we had the slow warrior that had a painful, miserable journey to 60, but it was rewarding in the end. Then we also had the paladin, which was basically auto attack city, stare at the wall, this is incredibly boring, I wish I was doing something else, and then level to 60. not much interactivity. They turned into healers late game, and that's about it. There was actually no protection. Paladins, level 60, not really, because there was a lack of hard taunt, and they couldn't really sustain mana more than one pull, so it was incredibly annoying to play a paladin. And then I would say that rogue would also be near the bottom of the leveling pool as well. Probably near shaman, because like I said, very gear dependent, needed to have good weapons, got to swap those weapons out every once in a while. But wasn't it funny how like 40% of the entire WoW population played rogues? They're 25 to like 35% or something like that. I've seen a graph.
Doesn't surprise me. How many times did you just get so many idiots? It's always rogues just sapping you, doing dumb stuff, and you're like, get out of here, rogue. Always a rogue.
Yeah, they had a great leveling experience, at least in terms of like ganking people and having fun in the PvP. But number one, they were slow as shit to level. And number two, when they got to level 60, they couldn't find a group anyway because there were so many rogues. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. Shamans were interesting because they were, you know, the class that was exclusive to the Horde. The Horde had the Shaman. The Alliance had Paladin. Sorry, yeah. Horde got Paladin in the Burning Crusade. Those two classes were pretty interesting. The Shaman, we had a good friend who played Shaman. Shout out to Lars Fest, holding down that torch, playing that Ellie Shaman late game, throwing those chain lightning bombs out, clear casting for days. This kid was a machine. But
monster.
Absolute monster, Lars Fest. Go check him out, twitch.tv/LarsFest. He puts on a great stream, by the way. Incredibly funny guy. White Sauce Finch. Anyway, Shamans were interesting because the dream spec was the two-handed Wind Fury one-shot build, right? You seen those videos, the Warsong Gulch one-shotting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting, but once again, hitting 60 as a shaman, you were the healer in the raid, right? They didn't pretty much do anything else.
Right.
And I think there was less flexibility. This is kind of one of the downsides, I would say, to vanilla versus some of the other expansions. There was, I think, a more strict representation of each class, and there were really predefined roles. I already talked a little bit about paladins being healers only, shamans being healers only. Warriors were different. Warriors had three totally respectable, awesome classes. You had the Mortal Strike for PvP, you had Tier 1 DPS with Fury rating, and you also had, of course, Protection Warrior, which was probably one of the more fun experiences I ever had. But generally speaking, priests healed, druids healed, no druid tank. Like, what I'm trying to say is there's a lack of diversity in playstyles. Did you ever get a sense that you were kind of cornered into one role? Kind of a difficult question for you because you played Mage, and of course Mage is a DPS class, but how'd you feel about class homogenization versus kind of strict class roles in vanilla? Well,
even with Mage, yeah, it's a DPS class, but it still had like Frost was a PvP spec, right? You hardly ever saw Frost mages in groups or raids. Not really. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Arcane mages. That Arcane sucked back then. It wasn't very good. So it's pretty much all fire. So even then.
Until you get into one core and everything's resisting your shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's funny. Forgot about that.
But the general trend of exclusive, play styles, that didn't bother you, or did it? Because later on in WoW, I know we're not trying to compare much, but later on in WoW, you have pretty much every class capable of doing just about anything, right?
I guess at the time, no, it didn't bother me. Now, yeah, I mean, that's slightly bad design, right?
Although, why it worked back then, I would argue, is because of loyalty. Because the game was so challenging, and because so much time was required for you to put in to get to level 60, there's a big attachment for players to character. And I don't think people minded as much because the journey to get to level 60 was personal, memorable, fun, although sometimes it's a complete nightmare. But when you got to 60, it's like, holy shit, okay, this is my boy. And if I gotta heal, I gotta heal, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some other stuff in terms of the leveling experience before we get into Endgame. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the skills that you could use to become a better player in WoW. Honestly, some of those are absent today. So there was a 5-second rule for mana regen. So whenever you used a skill in vanilla WoW, it would cut off your mana regen for 5 seconds. So you could actually front load all your spells in Downcast to take advantage of efficient mana regen. So you could blow your load, so to speak, on a mob, and then wand it to death after ticking on some mana regen in the process. There was also some interesting macros at play too. I was doing a little bit of research prior to this video. Apparently, Ret Paladins were able to do a /sit command macro. I don't know if you knew about this, to proc Reckoning Bombs. Now, a Reckoning Bomb was was basically this massive DPS burst that a Ret Paladin could do when he was critical striked. And back in vanilla WoW, if you were sitting down and anyone attacked you, except for spells, if someone attacked you with just a weapon, you were automatically crit. So I guess there was people out there that were running /sit commands on their mouse wheel 1 as Ret Pals and one-shotting mobs. I believe some of those people went to the hospital for carpal tunnel later on in life. That would be the obvious downside to that. More generally speaking, there was a big emphasis on animation canceling and strafing. As a warrior, I quickly learned to hamstring kite to kind of phase in and out of enemy attack ranges. This was also possible with Earthbind Totem as a shaman, so my boy Finch probably knows all about this. Little tips and tricks to make you a better player. You could also stack buffs. Buffs were multiplicative, meaning that a buff would enhance a buff that was already on you, right? It would keep going up. Like, investing in your retirements right now. You just compound interest, baby. You just got to keep that shit going. Also, you got to cycle your cooldown timers. One of the big things about playing my Hunter back in the day, Ukabuma style, before I sold that Dwarven hand cannon, was making sure that I cycled all my cooldown timers properly, had all of my cooldowns always offline, so that I knew I was maximizing my efficiency in my combat progression as a result. So those were some of the general skills I used. Did you use anything in particular for the mage class?
Yeah, something that's cool too, right? All of this stuff that you're talking about, there's never any tutorials or anything, right?
Never.
You just kind of learn on the fly, right? You go to the shop, you get this new skill, and you're like, what's this? Oh, dang, this is cool. How can I use this? You find out basically the best way to capitalize on these new skills. So for you, it was like, what did you say? Like the hamstring kiting, stuff like that. That's just something you picked up, right? And it's awesome. It works. It's cool.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about what you were saying. No fucking tutorials, you know. You stepped out into the World of Warcraft. Basically, you got that fat ass cutscene, get you pumped up. Then they dumped you off. If you were an orc like me, they dumped me off in Duratar, along with the other scumbag level 1s. And you were basically just put in the world, and the game just said, go. No tutorials, no manual. The only thing we got was, what? Tooltips? And often they
Tooltips.
Yeah, but you and I know that tooltips were often incredibly vague and cryptic.
Actually, no, I didn't do it. Oh, some, I guess. But not really. Like you talking about like rounding up the guys and blizzarding them and stuff like that.
Dude, round up the pack and start bombing down blizzards, dude. You didn't do that?
No, not really. I do remember doing in ZG when I was 60, Specking Frost and gathering up all the trash mobs and AoEing them. That was hard, but that's in ZG, right? That's in a raid instance, so you get those raid drop. The little, what do they have? Little tokens?
Little tokens?
Yeah, to collect. Yeah, I remember doing that.
Yeah, so while we're on that topic, let's talk about those dungeons. I don't know about you, but dungeons for me were one of the funnest things about vanilla WoW. Like now you just kind of speed through them in modern WoW, but back then, dungeons were ass kickers, right? Let's talk about Wailing Caverns for a second, okay? everyone gets stoked. Okay, you're level 19, maybe level 20. You want to get down on some Wailing Caverns. But let's be real here. Back then in 2004, how long did Wailing Caverns take?
You're talking from like the second you get that little glimmer in your eye, hey, I want to do Wailing Caverns, to when you actually walk out of the instance with your loot?
No, I'm talking about the second you enter the cave. Not the cave inside the instance. I'm talking about the cave with the fucking snakes and the stealth dragons. Before you actually had to get into the portal. How long would that take?
You ever have groups that ended before you even made it?
Yeah, dude.
You're wiping on the trash outside the instance, and they're like, all right, this ain't working.
Dude, how many times did your group just disband on RFK? RFD. Sorry, RFD. You had to clear the elite trash before you went into the portal.
You had to go through the thorns.
Dude, that's what we're talking about here. World of Warcraft was difficult, not because it was arbitrary, not because it was difficult just to be difficult, but because there was some purpose behind it, right? The journey is worth it when it's fulfilling. And let's go back and talk about dungeons real quick. As a Horde player, the first dungeon you probably go into would be Ragefire Chasm was pretty cool. Let's back up just a second, because we didn't talk about the quest progression in World of Warcraft Vanilla. This is something I always found was amazing, because just to get the quests for Ragefire Chasm, Wailing Caverns, if you wanted to collect all, I think there were 7 quests? 5
I feel like 7's right.
Yeah. But to collect all those quests required you to go to a variety of places, right? Thunder Bluff to get the holy shit one. You had to go the secret cave above Wailing Caverns. You had to go to Ratchet for another one. You had to go a couple other places as well. Like, let's talk a little bit about questing in World of Warcraft. Just the sheer effort it took to get quest efficiency. That was always on your mind, right? Because you said you were focused on questing. How much of your experience was mapping out where to go at what level and kind of creating that roadmap once you got accustomed with the game? Wasn't that some of the most immersive gameplay, kind of the more exciting thing about Vanilla WoW, is planning your route to 60?
Like back then, right, when the game first came out, there weren't 1 to 60 guides. You're just an idiot like everybody else.
Yep.
Right? You're just running through. You don't know where to go. Did the zones have, like, they had level suggestions, right?
They did on the map.
Right. So that's basically the extent that I mapped stuff out. I guess you basically go to a zone, do all the quests you can, and then you start, once that's dried up, you start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting a little bit off topic, because I was primarily talking about once you maybe rolled a few alts, yeah, you kind of planned out your progression from 1 to 60. But yeah, let's go back to what you were talking. Fresh out the gate in 2004, questing was a gigantic experience, and I think it was one of the things that weeded out the scrubs from the good people. Is the ability...
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I remember when I was in Tristfall Glades as an undead warlock, I accidentally went into the Eastern Plaguelands? Or was it the Western Plaguelands?
Western
Plaguelands. And a spider killed me in one shot, and I couldn't tell what level he was because it was question mark. That was an interesting experience, because it taught me about boundaries and what not to do, right?
Think about that too. That's a level, what, question mark, you have no idea. Right next to the starting zone. Yeah, if that doesn't teach you boundaries, I don't know.
Because a lot of games out there today, modern games anyway, you take that experience and you put it on paper for a modern game, and they will, label that with like a huge tutorial, or they'll put an on-screen prompt up that says you shouldn't go here, or something like that. If you wanted to do it, you could do it.
I would even say, like, the modern games, they don't do that. They don't smash level 50 zones right next to the level 10s, right? They're pretty linear in your leveling experience. Like, as you're going through, it's like you're getting funneled into the next zone. They're all like side by side, kind of.
Yeah. What I was trying to say is if they were to do that, they would go to great lengths to make sure you did not go anywhere.
Absolutely. They probably wouldn't even let you in there, right? It'd probably be like a barrier or something. You must be level 50 to enter.
Yeah, or they do the Dark Souls thing where they put a whole bunch of boulders in your way, a rubble, so you can't get to Drainlane Castle until you... Yeah, they would do something like that. But all right, we got to get on the topic of dungeons before we go into that in-game.
Okay.
So, what was your favorite...
real quick.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you the same thing. Go ahead.
Favorite dungeon. Oh, shit. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know this is... Okay, I'm going to give 5 seconds to you to guess what my favorite dungeon is. And I guarantee you, nobody on YouTube, anyone watching this video, will guess my favorite dungeon. Go ahead.
We're talking 5-mans, right? Just real quick.
Yeah, and if I've told you this in the past, you just don't cheat.
No, I don't remember. Strat?
My favorite dungeon in Vanilla WoW was Sunken Temple. I know. For some reason, I really liked the Indiana Jones style setup of going down and trying to find your way through this fucking clusterfuck maze shit ass fuck place. And I also liked it because it was in one of my favorite zones, which was the zone to the right of Stranglethorn. Can't remember the name off the top of my head. Swamp of Sorrows, that's it. Sunken Temple was my favorite, not necessarily because of the content itself, but did you ever try to find a fucking group for Sunken Temple? It took you forever. Nobody wanted to go to Sunken Temple. So when you finally found 4 other idiots to go with you, it was a fucking momentous occasion.
That's because nobody liked that place. For some reason in my head, I was thinking level 60 only. You're talking the whole game? Oh, man.
The whole thing, baby. I'm going to guess you like...
Okay, I got a place in mind right now.
Okay. I want to say...
It isn't level 60. That's your hand.
I'm going to go on a limb pretty confidently and say Scarlet Monastery.
Nailed it. That's it. Okay. Loved Scarlet Monastery. But isn't that's kind of like a lame answer, right?
No.
That's very broad.
No.
There's 4 instances in there.
But it's one, you know, it's one dungeon though.
Sure.
So I like Scarlet Monastery a lot because there were a literal fuck ton of quests you could do, and you had to be really smart about how you acquired those quests because some of them were chains that started in the Undercity of all places. I actually remember you running us through Scarlet Monastery on your mage level 60 on our alts. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
You don't fuck around in the Scarlet Monastery unless you got a level 60 mage on your back. So Scarlet Monastery was really cool. I really like the idea of supplementing my quest leveling experience by going to dungeons. I always felt like dungeons were worth it for me because sometimes I played classes that were inherently weak to solo quest or grind. So I liked the dungeons a lot. I also really liked the Zul'Farrak dungeon in Tamaris.
That was cool.
Did you do the event at the top of the stairs?
Yeah.
That was really cool. And you could also do you could summon the Grazilla.
Yeah.
If you had the quest from the...
So that was... Have you looked up, like, what you had to do to even get that stupid mallet?
You actually had to go to the hinterlands, right?
Yeah. That was a big quest, actually.
Some of the quests in Vanilla WoW were incredibly huge. I mean, you talk about the Princess quest in Arathi Highlands. Like, that was a holy shit quest chain just to get to that final mission. Like, you had to go through some shit. And you could literally spend days, if not an entire week, doing an entire quest chain. This all cycles back to the fact that everything in World of Warcraft Vanilla was incredibly time-consuming, yet rewarding. When you finished a milestone in the game, whether it was leveling up, getting that 1 skill points and you could get the next skill, to getting level 60 or completing a fat quest chain and getting a fat reward, it just felt really rewarding, and some of that has been lost in time. Like I've said before many times, we're not trying to compare Vanilla to Classic or to Modern WoW, but by itself as a standalone product, that was one of the reasons why I was so drawn to the game in the first place.
Yeah. I didn't... Okay, part of the reason Scarlet Monastery was my favorite one, how big, like, the pieces of gear you saw in there compared to the green crap you were wearing, that was some serious gear in there.
Yeah, and the cool thing about, and I know you're going to agree with me on this one, the cool thing about gear progression, which I believe to be amazing in Vanilla WoW, was that when you were leveling, you basically looked like a homeless piece of shit, right?
Yep.
And when you hit level 30, you went to SM, you started to get some of that cool gear. Level 40, you got, you know, some, maybe a couple blues, and then you finally hit 60 and you're like, oh, okay, I'm looking okay. But then you go to Orgrimmar and there's that tier 2 warrior standing on top of the auction house. That guy looks cool. You still look like a homeless piece of shit.
Yep. What was that two-handed sword? You know which one I'm talking about, from Blackwing Lair.
Oh, the spiky one?
Yeah.
That
I
one
can't think of the name.
Me neither. But what that did for me in terms of a vanilla player was like, oh shit, this guy looks awesome. I want to look like this guy. Like, I want to be this cool. So it compelled me to go out and seek like the really good gear. But the thing was, like we're talking about, everything was difficult. So there was no shortcut to, you know, the promised land. You weren't getting full epics just by hitting a button in a menu. You weren't getting legendaries hand-fed to you. You were a piece of crap.
No.
No, no, that's absolutely not. You were a complete piece of crap unless you did something about it. And when you finally got that gear and you were the one staying on that auction house, looking badass, that was the tits.
Mm-hmm. It was like there was a very clear line from like how much time you put into the game versus like how much better your character got, right? Like very, very clear line. Yes,
one could say that the cooler you looked in the game, the more of a nerd you were outside the game.
Yep. The less sunlight you saw.
Yeah, the less girlfriends you have. 100% correlation, cause and effect there. But the gear structure is kind of like the last thing I want to talk about with the end game before we talk about raids. You know, epics were fucking rare. Legendaries were unheard of unless you were the best of the best. Today, lots of people got legendaries, but back then, this is a fun fact, the entire time playing Classic WoW, or Vanilla WoW that is, up into TBC, I only found one BOE epic drop, despite me finding one in that group, the Dwarven Hand Cannon. I'm talking about by myself on my own, grinding out in the open world. I only found one epic, and that was in Feralis at the insect camp. It was some sort of epic dagger with the flame thing. I don't know what it was, but what I'm trying to say is, if you found some kick-ass gear, it meant something.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and end the conversation here on raiding and in-game content. Now, Vanilla WoW in comparison to current expansions of World of Warcraft had far less content than current offerings. That's pretty safe to say, right? Currently, right now, you can do a lot of different stuff, but given the fact that, you know, gear has homogenized, you know, LFR, stuff like that, there isn't a lot of reason to go out and do it. But in World of Warcraft Vanilla, you had mad incentive to like go into Battlegrounds and try to get your gladiator set. You had mad incentives to go to Molten Core, try to get those epics. You had like mad incentive to like seek out enchanters, like you were saying earlier, farm up gold, get those fat enchants, because I don't know about the mage class, but when I was playing warrior, like the difference between having an epic tier 1 boot with or without the proper enchant was absolutely huge. So let's end the end game discussion about raids. Now, to the best of my memory, like I said, I didn't participate in too many raids in Vanilla. We had Molten Core, we had Blackwing Lair, Nax. Was that it?
Those were the 40 mans, and there was another 40 man. There was AQ 40.
AQ40. ZG was TBC?
No, ZG was in there.
So we had like 5 core raids then.
I can list them off. There was ZG. You got Anixia's Lair. You got AQ25, AQ40, and then Molten Core BWL next. How many is that? 7?
7. That's actually more content than I actually thought.
But it was very spread out, right? It's not like all this stuff was available right out the gates. I don't even remember what was available out the gates. Maybe Molten Core?
You know, when you hit level 60, like I said before, you basically had mostly greens, right? Maybe a couple blues. So,
yeah, lucky if you have blues.
The cool thing about Molten Core as a pub is that you could kind of blend in, like I was saying earlier, but generally speaking, if you wanted to get anywhere late game, to get in any raids, you basically had to join a raiding guild, right?
I mean, if you wanted to see the in-game content, you were in a raiding guild, right? If you didn't show up to raids, you're getting replaced. Oh. So there was also that kind of pressure too,
automatically.
Right?
Okay.
So that's, I mean, and we've already talked about how long stuff took, so it's a big commitment, but it's also, I think it was worth it, obviously, because I did it. But.
What was your favorite raid?
Like I said, I didn't really do the 40 mans a lot, but out of 25 mans, I loved AQ. Loved it.
This is a great segue to talk about our final talking point before we wrap up this beast of a video, the community. Now, community building is something that I would say is a very tender subject because people have different opinions on the weight of a community per any given MMO. In my opinion, the community of an MMO is one of the most important things.
The definition of an MMO, right? Massively multiplayer online. You're playing with other people. That's, if you're just playing an MMO alone, it ain't an MMO, right?
And the beauty of having a very interconnected, interwoven community is that you experience the game together in its infancy stage. I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of the worries I have with World of Warcraft Classic. Number one being, I'm not sure if that magical feeling 15 years ago will be there once again, replaying the same content, because there's really no surprises for me or for you or for any World of Warcraft veteran. But the community is what holds an MMO together. You experience the world together, you form bonds. I actually met quite a few people who were in my raiding guild who I still talk to today. You know, we've got an incredible bond. There's just something about, you know, putting in time and effort into a game, coming together, overcoming challenges, traveling the world together, existing in a new MMO as a unit. For me, it was an important and very critical element to enjoying this game, because I didn't want to play an MMO alone, you know, especially one that was so big, so daunting, had so much content that I literally could not do by myself.
Like it's almost directly linked to like how the staying power of the MMO, right? If the people are invested in both the community and the game, they're gonna stick around, they're gonna be playing, and that's what you want, right? You want people to be logging in every day, being like, "Hey, where's my Bodhi Tone? We gotta hit up Wailing Caverns." Right? That's what you want.
Let's go ahead and wrap up this video real quick. We talked about Vanilla WoW, the amazing world. It was big, it made you feel small. Cross-faction PvP was amazing. The level of experience from 1 to 60 was incredibly difficult, but it was rewarding because it demanded so much of you. There was so many quality of life features that were completely omitted during this experience, which made you communicate with other people, foster relationships. There was an amazing in-game economy. There was some high skill ceiling to the general combats. The dungeons were fantastic. The gear progression was out of control. In the general sense that you were playing a living game, it was there because the end game was also very rewarding. Let's finally talk about kind of the issue everyone seems to be talking about right now, which is the transition from Vanilla WoW to Classic World of Warcraft. What is your biggest excitement going into Classic WoW And do you have any misgivings or worries about throwing yourself into the same MMO as a 30-something-year-old versus how it was when you were 16?
The thing I'm most excited about is leveling. I can't wait. This is coming from someone who played the same class for the 8 years that I played. Same class. I was on one class, Mage. Guess what I'm playing in vanilla? Can you guess?
You already told me you're playing a Mage.
Yeah, that's right. And I am stoked. Can't wait. So I'm just excited to kind of relive that again. See how it goes. Because I only leveled a Mage once, right? See how it goes with the knowledge that I have. See if it's really as hard as I remember, or if I just sucked. Could be the game's not that hard, but I'm pretty sure the game's still hard. And it's not because I sucked. Truthfully, I'm worried about the staying power. Because I really want this to succeed. The thing is, too, if this succeeds, what's to stop Blizzard from releasing a BC server or a Wrath server? How awesome would that be?
Yeah, because we talked about, if this is successful, what is the natural next step for World of Warcraft in terms of the classic format? In my opinion, 6 to 9 months after the release of vanilla, or maybe 12 months, the natural extension is to release classic TBC. I'm totally excited to play classic WoW. Like you, I am concerned about the staying power. I think people have changed. Although I do think people like myself hold high amounts of reverence to classic WoW, and we are very eager to jump in. I think a lot of people are in that same boat where we're just excited to relive our favorite experiences in the past. Some of those people might have outgrown that experience. Other new generations may not be willing to invest the time needed to participate in a growing, large, challenging game like this. Other people might simply not have the time. As working professionals, there is no clear, is this going to succeed or is this not going to succeed? I think we just have to see how well Blizzard supports this. I'm hoping that 1.12 is as true to the vanilla experience as possible, while giving us some of the quality of life features, enhanced disability features, enhanced resolutions, more stable frame rate, better server connectivity, some of the stuff that got fixed later on. But just in terms of my ending thoughts for classic WoW, I can't fucking wait, dude. It's gonna be a kick-ass time, and
it's gonna be so good.
I'm actually more excited about classic WoW, to be honest, than I am Anthem or any of the other big-time games coming out next year. Probably excluding Cyberpunk 2077, but don't tell that to my...
That's a spicy title.
That is going to be spicy as well. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this video, guys. I want to appreciate you making it this far. Do you got any final thoughts? Anything you want to say regarding your experiences in vanilla?
Yeah, Lance sucked.
All right, so we're going to end it there, guys. Appreciate your viewership today. Have yourself a fantastic day. Drop those World of Warcraft comments down below in the, of course, comment section, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Take care.